G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to my first impressions review and gameplay overview for Grim Dawn. So to kick things off, let's just jump straight into what actually Grim Dawn is. So Grim Dawn is made by Crate Entertainment and it's an action RPG. It has a purchase price of around $20 when it releases, although it's currently in alpha. So Grim Dawn is the spiritual successor to Titan Quest, and it's actually being made by a lot of the original developers of Titan Quest. The developers Crate Entertainment are about a 6-man team, so pretty pure indie devs in every sense of the word there. The game is actually made in the Titan Quest engine, and that sort of segues me nicely into the graphical engine and the fidelity of it all, and the sound effects and things like that. So overall, when I jumped straight into Grim Dawn, it felt like I was going back into an old game of Dungeon Siege 2, which to be honest, I'm perfectly fine with. When I pick up a cool indie game that's like meant to be like, you know, retro-styled action RPG with, you know, new mechanics and updated mechanics, and it's meant to be like a spiritual successor to an older game using the older game's engine, I expect, you know, a certain sort of graphical engine. And the overall look that they're going for is the photorealistic, highly detailed texture sort of look, which really conveys, I think, perfectly what they're going for with this world. So the setting in Grim Dawn is that the world has been fought over by these two all-powerful races, and humanity is caught in the middle. It's grim times for humanity, and you know, they're scrounging around. Currency is now iron instead of gold, and you know, there's no monetary system behind that. People are just trying to get together whatever they can. So like your weapons are a combination of older style weapons combined with steampunky style pistols and rifles, and all sorts of collection of mishmash of different eras of human technology, basically just scavenging together whatever they can. So this highly detailed, gritty environment system, I think, suits perfectly exactly what they're trying to convey there with that. The sound, the musical score in Grim Dawn, I'm a huge fan of already. I've played for a couple hours, and every single musical score I've heard has been pleasant, has been appropriate, and just is a pleasure to listen to. The melee sound effects I'm also fairly impressed with. As you can hear there, it's got a very satisfying thud to it. Ranged attacks effects and sound effects are a little bit less impressive. The developers have actually made videos of them recording the different sound effects using, like, you know, broomsticks and boxing bags to produce the sound effects and things like that. And I think their effort has really come through there, because it's an awesome sounding game overall. Ranged sound effects are a little bit lackluster, but the melee is really satisfying sounding. Musical score is awesome. Currently there's no voiceovers or really like cinematics or anything in the game, but I believe they are both things that they plan on adding to the full version. Again, this is currently in alpha. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was combat. Now combat is your typical what you'd expect from an action RPG. Left click, right click for your main attacks, and then you can use a skill bar down the bottom, which is 1 through 0. You can bind to any skills you like in the game to unleash different sorts of skills. Basically you have a lot of freedom in what you bind the different skills to. For example, I've been playing this soldier class, and he has a lot of different melee focused skills, including stuns and bleeds and things like that. So I can do a shield charge to enemies here, I can do a sort of a shockwave attacking there, I can get frozen by enemies, and I can basically wail on them while expending my different skills and you know, entering defensive mode. So there's a mixture of auras and skills and all sorts of different things that can be used in the combat system. It's easily to switch between two weapon sets. You have your ranged weapon set and your melee weapon set, and that can be done at the press of the button and very much on the fly. It's very easy to be shooting with your ranged weapon when enemies close with you, to easily switch over to your melee weapons and attack with those. And overall the combat engine feels really, really solid. They've taken the original Titan Quest combat engine and just improved it in just about every way. It feels in Titan Quest, which I played briefly, it felt like there was a delay between what you were doing, the actions, and how they connected with opponents. But that's definitely not the case in this game. Combat feels really, really solid for this sort of isometric action RPG game. So what about skills, classes, and customization? Because that is by far one of the biggest parts of any action RPG. For me at least, the big thing that draws me through is the different synergies and things that I can find in skills and how I can create awesome builds. So firstly, the class system is very, very similar to Titan quest. Basically, when you first get you reach your first level, you originally make a character that has no class or mastery. Basically they're called masteries. What you do is you jump straight into the game. As soon as you level up, you get to pick your first mastery, which, as you can see here, I picked a soldier. Then at level 10, you have the option of picking a second mastery. So as you can see, I can undo this here since I haven't actually put any points into it yet, and I can either choose to be, currently in the alpha, a demolition or a cultist. So it's possible to multi-class. Now obviously the drawback to multi-classing is that I can either, not multi-class and sink all of my points into being a strong soldier, or I can multi-class and try and create some synergy between a demolitionist and a soldier and create an interesting build. So there's obviously a lot of diversity, and as more masteries or as more classes are added to the game, there's going to be even more flexibility in the different multi-classes you can come up with. Essentially, you're creating your own build through either sticking to an individual mastery or combining two masteries and picking the skills that you find sync well together. So inside of that, once you've picked a mastery, every time you level up you get a certain amount of skill points. Now you can sink these skill points into basically mastering that mastery. So so every skill point you put into just being a soldier gives you extra stats, basically base stats, but it also increases this bar and moves to the right each time you put a skill point into it, which gives you access to the next tier of skills within that particular mastery. So for example, if I was to put one skill point into demolitionist, I'll be able to have access to these skills here. And if I was able to if I put 5 skill points into being a demolitionist, then I can have access to those. So you kind of have to balance spending your skill points on passively increasing your masteries or increasing the actual power of the actual individual skills. So as I said, there's a fair bit of flexibility there, and overall a lot of the skills seem very solid so far, the ones I've used. Cadence, the normal attack for the soldier, is of particular note to me, feels really good. Every third attack deals extra damage, so you sort of have this charge management system, and it's very satisfying to play with. Most of the skills seem to have cooldowns or are targeted, but it's not something that I felt too awkward. So for example, with my shockwave there, I can target it, or if I equip it to the mouse, it'll fire straight away. So it's an interesting sort of system there. The other aspect of character customization is your attributes. So attributes have sort of been simplified in this game down into cunning, physique, and spirit. So cunning is what you would expect to be your dexterity stats, but it basically combines anything to do with chance to hit and critical, as well as a few other little benefits and things like that. Physique is, your tanky brawn class, and spirit is your caster sort of energy and spirit class, like that. So you can sink points into either one of those. You can go all three if you want to be balanced, or you can sink into one of those. Simplified, but seems fairly satisfying when combined with the other system. So probably the second big thing for any action RPG, I believe, behind the customization and skills and builds is actually itemization. After all, action RPGs are all about smashing enemies and getting as much loot and as cool loot as possible. So far I've had a good chance to play around with the different itemization and the crafting system, and both seem fairly interesting so far. So you have your basic slots: shoulders, gloves, boots, pants, chest, shields, weapons, offhands, two-handed weapons, and you can switch all those, as well as your 2 rings and amulets. Pretty standard fare for action RPGs. When it comes to things like armor, you have armor that is focused on physique characters, so they have required physique and required level, and then there's other ones that might have required cunning, and then there's other ones that might have required spirit as well. So there's different ones that lend themselves well to different builds, although everything in here I've been seeing so far has been physique. Although there's a spirit, basically a shield, an offhand there. In terms of weapons, you have a good mixture of melee weapons. Everything seems to be one-handed so far in terms of melee weapons, so I'm not sure if there's any two-handed ones that I haven't seen. And in ranged weapons, there's single-handed weapons that can be used with shields, like pistols, and then there's crossbows and rifles that can be used with 2 hands, obviously slower fire rate and more power. In terms of actual stats on these, you have your basic tiering, so you have your white items, and then you have the next tier after that is yellow, which has some magical stats to it, less powerful but obviously more powerful than the white items. Then after that you have green. Now I assume there's also like more unique and legendary tiers after that, so possibly something like orange and purple, but obviously they just progress in power and rarity as you move up. The actual stats that can roll on items seem pretty interesting. There's mixtures of resistances, extra damage, bonuses to skills, which I always find is a very good thing in these sorts of action RPGs, and overall like a mixture of the different types of stats. So you can get primary stats on them, you can get things like 13 plus to spirit here, which is a primary stat, or like on my pants here you can get increased offensive ability, which is one of those secondary stats. So you can buff your primary stats, your secondary stats, or you can get extra resistances like down through here, and lots of different things to benefit your character in that way there, and seems to be a fair bit of variety in that as well. So the next thing is the crafting system, which I'll leave the this menu here and jump into the crafting system. So I have this pair of shoulders here, which is obviously going to be pretty good. As soon as I can wear that, I will go to wear that. You essentially, as you kill enemies, you find components. So, for example, I have a bunch of cracked lodestones here. Now, these lodestones by themselves add a very small benefit to whatever you equip them to. So, this one here is used in weapons, shields, and offhands. However, if I combine 6 of them, they become even more powerful. So, what you do is you drop this into an item, and then once you have 6 of them in that item, they'll combine and you'll get an extra added benefit. So, for example, let's find something for this pair of shoulders here to equip it into. So, we'll find something that's used in armor. So, this adds extra health. So, I need 5 of those to reach the next tier, but I'll have 3, so I'll sink each one of those into this. So I can right click that and add that into there, and then now this has basically a bristly fur as a component. Now I can't put other types of components in that, but I can continue adding bristly fur into this. So each time I add it, I can get an extra 16 health per one I add to it. However, once I get to 5, it's going to give me an extra added bonus on top of that. So pretty interesting crafting system, and it is its own sort of mini game to finding these different crafting components and finding good base items to add them into, and trying to find a bunch of the same crafting components so you can really power it up on each one of your items. So I guess the final question is, overall, am I having fun with this game? Then I have to say the answer to that is a very solid yes. The combat system feels very fluid, much more fluid than I was expecting, especially as I mentioned with Titan Quest being somewhat laggy feeling, I felt. The combat is also sufficiently challenging. I've actually fought a boss that took me quite a long time to down, and I had to really learn her attack patterns and things like that. There's a fair bit of actually complexity into those. Certain enemies that surround you can be very challenging. Overall, even at this low level, often action RPGs in their first difficulty are very easy, but even being a fairly experienced action RPG veteran, I'm finding that this is a reasonably difficult game, at least as melee. Ranged obviously has the advantage of being able to kite and things like that. The movement system is solid, weapon switching is immediate, and it's fun switching between your rifle and your main weapon. All of the abilities I've tried so far have been fairly satisfying and serve different roles. The questing is not too bad. It's generally you go out and rescue people, or collect different things, or kill certain zombie soldiers and rescue things. Your general sort of action RPG questing style things. However, it's very open worldish. So the game isn't very gated overall. So often when you go through some action RPGs, you'll start off in one area and you'll have to go through, everything will get funneled into one gate, and you have to do the quest in that area, you have to go back to town, then you can go into the next area after that. However, there's so much room for you to move around and explore in this game. So if we take a look at the overall map here, I have a lot of different ways that I can progress through and around different areas, and I can go back and do earlier quests in earlier zones, and the quests will overlap as well. So for example, one of my particular quests at the moment is to hunt down these zombie soldiers. Now I was doing these are just in the normal overworld spread around, as you saw I killed one a little while ago, but I'm also encountering them during other quests in other locations. So for example, I went down into the sewers to fight some lizard creatures, and I found more zombie soldiers down there. So it was satisfying, doing a different quest and making progress towards this larger overall quest as well. So it does feel very free, and that's a really good sign, I think, for this type of game. So something exciting happened at the end of that last little bit of combat there. A blue item dropped. I haven't seen a blue item before, so this will be interesting to check out. So what did we find? We found a Berserker's Cowl. Grants skill Berserk. So I don't even know if Berserk is another skill available through the normal skill system, so this could be completely new. Obviously it's got big blue letters, pretty interesting. 12% extra physical damage, bleeding damage, cunning damage. Seems like a really powerful item. I wonder if we can actually see what Berserk is here. Berserk, granted by item. Enter a Berserker state of mind, lashing out with increased ferocity, cost of survivability. Now this is pretty interesting because I haven't actually seen Berserk anywhere else. Is Berserk in here somewhere? So that is super interesting. So basically I've just found a skill on an item that is not available through the normal system. So that adds an extra layer of depth to the itemization system. Something I'm really super excited and impressed about that. And that adds me a lot more drive for me to go and search out for more of these blue items to find more of these skills. So now I have this Berserk skill that I can activate at any point, which is going to increase my power and make me do more damage and things like that. That's very exciting. So anyway, Grim Dawn is in early alpha. You guys can buy into the alpha. It's $50 supporter pack to get alpha access. Otherwise you can wait for the beta to come out and buy a supporter pack to get into that, which will be much cheaper. And then you can wait again for the full release, which will be somewhere around the $20 mark. It's offline, single player, but there is online multiplayer that you can play as well. So it plans on releasing through Steam and off Steam as well. So if you want no DRM style of the game, you can download that directly from the developers. Overall, pretty exciting. I'm glad to be jumping into this game and to have it actually be fairly impressive, because this is a game a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.